The practice benefits from nearby off-street parking, a written agreement with Leewood Manor Care Home for 6 spaces, and sustainable travel options. Not all patients will arrive by car, and the changing workforce reduces staff parking demand. While highways have advised against this application, their comments are only advisory. There is no evidence of severe harm. The responsibility for weighing this planning balance rests with this committee. Also, if the approval is recommended today, there will be no costs to the local authority. However, if we do refuse, there is a likelihood there would be an appeal, and it will demonstrate that Rushcliffe Planning Authority have not acted consistently or taken precedence into account. On this basis, the clear public benefit and compliance with planning policy justify approval, and I'm not persuaded today by the office's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis and then Councillor Birch.
Second motion.
Okay, Councillor Birch.
Thank you, and I think most people have spoken today are in agreement. What I would ask is, there are no conditions in that proposal. I would ask that we put conditions in place to protect the residents. We have a duty to them, and I hope we can do our best to mitigate the impact of this. Thank you.
And I think if I've understood correctly, I think Councillor Parek's motion is that planning permission be granted subject to conditions. Now the general conditions, as would normally be done, to be drafted by the officers, but with an inclusion at least with a condition relating to a travel plan for accommodation to the surgery. And then I think we need some advice on how and if we can deal with the acquisition, use, provision of these extra spaces.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, as per the report in relation to the care home parking spaces, paragraph 82, a unilateral undertaking is required because it's outside of the application site, and that's to secure their long-term sort of provision for those parking spaces to be used by the applicant. So any resolution, if members are minded to go down that route, I would recommend that that's included as part of that, and it's resolved to secure that legal agreement prior to the issuing of any planning permission, and subject to obviously conditions. I'll pass over to Katie in a second just to run through sort of some conditions, just to make sure that everyone's aware of what what it would be. In terms of the legal agreement, sometimes these take quite a lengthy amount of time to arrange and secure and sign. So it may be best that this is there's a sort of a caveat in the resolution that if that legal agreement isn't completed within a certain amount of time, probably 6 months, then planning permission may not be granted permission, because if that's hinging, I'm just trying to gauge whether it hinges on securing that legal agreement for those spaces or not, because it might be that if that legal agreement isn't secured, then planning permission is refused in line with the recommendation set out in the report. I just thought I'd put that out there.
Councillor Wells.
If you're going to make a proviso, I would like the wall taken down in the picture. Then the dentist has got at least 2 more car parking spaces, because it's got a drop curb. So
I saw Councillor Perrette, Councillor Ellis, and then Councillor Thomas.
I completely appreciate where Councillor Birch is coming from and that we need to protect the residents, but I'm hoping that the applicant would try and get the legal agreement in place. But I think the applicant has also demonstrated other mitigating factors in terms of other parking spaces available throughout the area within 300 or 400 meters of the surgery. So I would not, if for any reason, if that 6 spaces are not secured, I just wouldn't want the caveat in that it needs to be refused. So yes, put it that as a, I don't know how to word it, that the applicant needs to consider and make strong efforts and to secure that legal agreement, but that shouldn't be the cause of refusing the application.
I've lost my track here. Councillor Ellis, I think, and then Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would be very uncomfortable with a condition which, after all this discussion and the agreement by every councillor who spoke that this should go through, if on a technicality relating to 6 car parking spaces, it were to fail in 6 months' time, that would be a very unsatisfactory outcome, in my view. I think too much importance is being attached to these 6 spaces. I think if we are in agreement that the highways report is actually not acceptable, then we should make sure that when we give approval this evening, it actually happens.
Councillor Thomas, please.
I think I agree with most of what people have said, really. I think in terms of conditions, if we're going forward to on a vote to recommend this, in terms of conditions, I don't necessarily think that a condition is required on opening hours here. In that it's unlikely to be a huge concern. You know, people coming and going in the evenings and weekends is unlikely to be a much worse situation than anything else. I wouldn't want that one. I think a travel plan for staff is a reasonable condition to ask for. I would also support some sort of condition or advice to the applicant to produce information for patients as to how to travel to the clinic. And where to park if they do come by car, stressing, you know, the need to park safely away from junctions and so on. And I think in terms of the layout at the front, maybe a condition for a layout plan to the car parking area and the front of the clinic, to incorporate car parking spaces and perhaps a disabled car parking space as well, you know, would be something that the applicant would consider. I think it's worth having that layout plan conditioned. So that's where I am with it. Thank you.
Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to agree with what Councillor Thomas has said about the opening hours, because in the evening, the car park in Hilton Crescent will be empty. So if there is an evening clinic or weekend, or maybe not weekends, but certainly evenings, that would be available. I can't see that the number of extra cars is going to cause the problems that highways are foreseeing. However, I can see why officers have come to this decision based on that advice. As Councillor Ellis said right at the beginning, the strength of that advice against is something I've not seen before. But it is a wide, there's plenty of space for on-street parking, and I can't believe living on a road where there are cars parked both sides and it is very tight to get down, why they've suddenly decided you can't park on a wide road where every house has got a drive. I really can't see their logic, but obviously that's the reason for having committees. These committees were actually doing a useful job tonight, that officers have had to come to this decision based on that advice, and we can make a different decision if we like as elected representatives.
Councillor Chapman, I didn't detect in there an implication that sometimes that this committee deals with things that aren't important. There are things. So see me afterwards. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. And I do agree with Councillor Thomas with respect to a condition with advice to patients where to park. I think that would be very useful. Very hard to enforce, but I'm sure you do it in good faith, and that would be helpful. Going back to the 6 spaces, my understanding is that's for staff. So what that's doing is getting those members of staff who go there every single day, it's getting them off the roads straight away as a baseline. That's what that's achieving, and it's freeing up capacity on streets. So I really do think it is very important, and I do respectfully disagree with you on that. I think it's really important. We need to get the staff cars off the street. And I would say, again, it's reminding councillors, there's a safety aspect here that the Highways Authority have put in. And I would say as well, from my own personal experience, my family own commercial property, I have seen firsthand how new expansions and frankly, new builds, but new expansions to existing properties can have catastrophic effects on the surrounding area. And whilst I repeat, I am minded to support this, I don't think we're doing enough at this present moment in time to protect the local people. I hear what you're saying about the conditions to opening times, and yes, you're quite right. It's likely the car park will become empty in the evening. So I hear that. Weekends, I mean, if you said yourself, it's not a huge issue. So if it's not a huge issue, why not put the condition on? It's a sentence. You know, it's maybe just restricted to the weekend, because then, you know, there will be a lot more cars on the roads at the weekend. Repeating again, there's a potential safety issue here. So I think it's prudent and sensible and fair to have a restriction on opening times for the weekend. I'd be happy to cede the evenings, but I think that would be proportionate. But again, in my mind, the 6 spaces, I think is very important. I'd be open to extending the time. So if you need more time to get the legal agreement in place and to negotiate and to get the paperwork done, maybe for 12 months, I don't know if we could set that or whatever it may be a bit more flexible, because as you say, we don't want it to fall down on that, on a technicality, but I think that's an important technical point. So I'm just going to make that case. Really, we need to protect the residents. If we're going to pass it, we need to protect the people that live in the vicinity. And going back to what some other people said earlier, I think it is overwhelmingly likely most people will travel by car, and yes, that is an assumption to a degree, but that is based on broad travel data and commuter data to commercial enterprises. Most people do travel by car. I know it's West Bridgeford, but I think that's not an unfair assumption to make. And also, we don't know either way, so we need to plan for the worst case scenario. So that's where I'm coming from, and I would just urge councillors just to please do our best to protect those residents living nearby.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, please, and then we're going to have some input from the officers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been thinking about this and wondering why highways are objecting to on the safety grounds. Every photograph I've seen, the streets so far are empty. Now, speaking of somebody who used to own and run a driving school, and I'm still working as a MIDAS driving examiner part-time, the only reason I can see is to protect that junction. No other reason. They don't want people parking on that junction. I think that's the only reason why, but apart from that, there is plenty of other places to park. So maybe we should be asking the county to put double yellow lines around that junction to protect it, to stop people parking there. The highway code states you shouldn't park within 10 metres of a junction. And I think that possibly the only reason that they are objecting to it is to protect that junction. Had that clinic been on a straight bit of road, I don't think there'd have been a problem. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Cullen, please.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, obviously been listening quite closely to everyone, what everyone's been saying. So in terms of, I suppose, a resolution, it could look along the lines of resolving to grant planning permission subject to the prior completion of a legal agreement to secure the 6 spaces, and subject to conditions. And if that legal agreement isn't secured, then it, the item could then come back to a planning committee for further consideration within a time frame. So let's say if it's 6 months, or if it's 12 months, or the wording could actually include, in consultation with the chair of the planning committee, to extend that time frame, just to allow that process to be undertaken. So that's something which you might want to consider. In terms of the conditions, the specific wording, we would normally look for sort of the delegation to undertake that. I'm going to pass over to Katie just to sort of run through some conditions, if that's okay.
Thanks. So yes, conditions that we were considering, just quick run through. So we would include the standard time limit condition. We'd include a condition regarding plans, so that would include layout plans, condition regarding materials, one to cover the first floor fenestration on the northern elevation to be obscurely glazed and non-opening, so that's to protect the amenity of the neighbouring dwellings. Condition regarding noise levels for externally mounted plant or equipment. Was considering operating hours, so I'm not sure how we've resolved that here, but I was considering, I think the practice currently runs during the week between the hours of 8:30 and 5, so that was my initial thoughts, but yep. Delivery, a condition we're in on the delivery and waste collection hours. Condition on a travel plan, so that would include recommendations to patients on how they can get to the practice sustainably through bus or walking, cycling, etc. And then a condition to secure the additional parking at the front of the facility as discussed as well. That was the extent of the conditions. Thank you.
I think it's also just worth noting the operating hours condition, that was also recommended by the Environmental Health Officer as part of their comments to the application. So that's where that's going to stemmed from ourselves.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to clarify a situation then about 6 space gate. So I think clearly it's Councillor Perek and Councillor Ellis's decision, but can I just make sure I've understood what the potential proposal is? And my understanding was that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions outlined there, but also subject to the completion of a unilateral undertaking to acquire use of those spaces within, say, 6 months. And if that is achieved, great. If it's not achieved, rather than the application being refused, the application would then essentially come back to committee again, rather than being refused at that point, if it's not completed by the deadline, or we could give them an extended deadline.
I'm quite uncomfortable about this unilateral agreement. It's asking quite a lot of the care home to make a unilateral agreement about them, and it's a long process. Actually getting it sorted out and bringing it back to planning committee is going to delay this work, I'm sure of that. And the one thing that the applicant can control is where his staff park, and the travel plan could be, could state in the condition that the travel plan had to specify that the staff park somewhere safe out of the vicinity of the surgery and not in the shopping centre car park. That there's plenty of on-street road parking here, actually. When you think of all the places that we look at that have to have parking, and there is no on-street parking, you look at those. And also, there's the overwhelming weight of how important this facility is. Yes, road safety is monumentally important, but they can sort that out, as Councillor Brown says, with a bucket of yellow paint drawing lines around that junction. They can sort out most of those problems. But children's teeth rotting because they haven't got a dentist is also a health and safety consideration. So we're balancing, as everybody said, what we're balancing here is the highways statement versus the impact of this application and the need for it.
Councillor Calvert, please.
Thank you. Yep. I was going to make 2 points, but one's already been made. The other one is about whether we can give any formal feedback to the local highway authority to have a more evidence-based approach in future when they're submitting their comments. Thank you.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you. So a few things I forgot to mention earlier with regards to the feedback, the public comments. The majority of the objections were from people, if you map it, were from the vicinity, the local vicinity. There was a widespread of support, including from the other side of Nottingham, which sort of undermines the public transport argument because they must be travelling by car if they're coming from Sherwood and further afield. So I think we should note that. I totally disagree with Councillor Thomas with regards to it delaying things. A legal agreement, it's a legal document. You pay a solicitor to draw it up and away you go. It's really not that difficult. It's pretty standard and bread and butter. It's not hard at all. And with regards to children's teeth rotting, again, I don't know the ins and outs of your business in the catchment area. In West Bridgford, the reason why children's teeth are rotting in this country, in my view, is largely down to culture and bad parenting, rather than lack of capacity in certain areas. When you look at areas with high deprivation, that's where the children's teeth are rotting. I very much doubt there are children's teeth rotting in West Bridgford due to lack of capacity. It's not like the capacity is going to be built and it's magically going to solve the problem with regards to children's teeth rotting. So I don't think that was a particularly pertinent point there. I come back to the safety aspect. We have had the Highways Authority tell us as a council there is a potential safety issue with emergency vehicles being unable to access the area. And we're putting reasonable mitigations in place here, in my view. We're suggesting reasonable mitigations, but we don't seem to be putting them in place. All I'm saying is that there's nothing here that we've suggested that's unreasonable. The opening hours, getting a legal agreement in place to solidify these 6 car parking spaces. This is not asking the earth. This is reasonable and proportionate. And again, I'm minded to support it. If we can't get these conditions in place, I don't think I can support it because I can't in good conscience vote for something that will potentially have a safety outcome for people. You want to talk about children's teeth rotting. What about children who need an ambulance and the ambulance can't get through? You know, what about children nipping through a junction because there's a blind corner and they can't see the road? You know, we can all play that game. The core crux of this is the highways safety aspect, and we should take maximum mitigations to mitigate that problem. And I don't think we're doing that at the minute. Honestly, I'm going to keep fighting this corner. Weekends, no trading on the weekends. Get a legal agreement for that parking spaces. Travel plan, done and dusted.
Okay, I think it's time to focus our attention and get towards a decision. As far as I can see, Councillor Parekh, what I think the main point here that I'll ask you to clarify is, bearing in mind it's now your motion, what's your view with respect to the unilateral undertaking that we've heard about for next door? Do you want that in or not? Okay, and if you want, and then once we've got that clear, we'll be voting on that motion, which if we're happy with, we'll support. If we're not happy with a part of that motion, as Councillor Birch says, we won't be able to support it. So what say you about the undertaking,
So
please?
just appreciate where Councillor Birch is coming from. I have to slightly disagree. I was reading the comments on the portal because you mentioned the support. There are 2 comments on the portal, which is actually people living in Grange Park and one actually living opposite the surgery. A lady called Charlotte, I'll give you the name. She said on the portal, the new design with the first floor looks nice and it will no doubt have great facilities which we all can benefit from. I have never experienced any parking issues as there is an abundant amount of on-street parking around. I can't see any downside to these plans. And she's actually said in her comments, I live directly opposite to this dental practice. Then we have Mr. Simon Onions. He says he lives in Grange Park, just few doors down. I support the extension of the dental practice as it would improve local services and benefit the local area. I appreciate where you're coming from, but if I have seen evidence of 2 locals, one who actually lives opposite the surgery, I'm not in agreement with the unilateral agreement condition.
And I think you're, as the second, are also happy with that. So it's just the hours. So, can I, for clarity, Councillor Peck, is it fair to say that your motion, therefore, is that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions that were explained here, outlined by the officers? So I think that would to include the opening hours as per the environmental health recommendation in the report, travel plan, etc., but not to include the universal undertaking. Is that your motion? Yes. And that's the motion that you're seconding. Very good. So unless anybody wants to wave madly at me that they're not ready to indicate a vote on that, I'd ask all those in favour. Okay. So at that point, I'll ask all those in favour of that motion to indicate now, please. And all those against that motion. 2. So on that basis, the decision and abstentions. I'm sorry you've had that experience, Councillor Manander. So on that basis, the decision is that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions that were explained there. Very good. So we're on to the appeals. Mr. Cullen, please.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, 2 appeals just to note from January. Again, let me know if you've got any questions or queries on that. It's probably just worth noting that both of them came with costs decisions as well, and both were dismissed for the appellant. So yeah, any questions now or after?
Very good. So that's it. We'll close the meeting. Thank you, everyone.